Welcome everyone to my channel. My name is Sandra and I'm the founder of Journey to Authentic Living. Today I will talk about confrontation and or internal conflicts within relationships and give you some examples of different forms under the umbrella of conflict and or confrontation. When I speak of relationships, I will be addressing all relationships. Those we have with our spouses, partners, coworkers, friends, family, etc. And why is this topic important? Well, because it's inevitable living in the world. Relationships are everything and they hold our life together. Even if you consider yourself an introvert person or maybe just have one person in your life, you are still somebody who is in relationship with the world around you. You still have to go to the grocery store or manage to speak to someone on the telephone and all these things. And the more we learn how to manage our conflict in healthy and productive ways, the better our relationships will be and the more satisfied we will live. As a personal development coach and counselor, the issue of relationships for clients always come into play within our coaching sessions. My professional and personal point of view is that it is also normal to encounter conflict and difficulties within all our relationships. In fact, if you do not periodically encounter difficulties or you try to avoid them, say with a spouse or a good friend, then you cannot have a deeper level of growth within the relationship. In other words, conflict really can make any relationship better. And you're probably wondering how so. For many reasons, and some of them I will name as we go into the discussion here. First, we have a tendency to live by our individual perspective, and sometimes we forget that other people have their perspective or beliefs that may rub us the wrong way, or vice versa. This conflict or friction provides us an opportunity to grow by viewing unemotionally what the other person is trying to convey to us. The tricky part is that oftentimes people are more inclined to remain firm with their beliefs, therefore not allowing space to honestly look at the situation from the other person's perspective. What can also make this even more difficult when talking to someone is when people make remarks such as, "I can listen, but don't try to change my mind or convince me." This rhetoric is, it's defensive and caustic, and you can feel that the other person is unwilling to honestly comprehend. True understanding comes from an unemotional place, and sometimes it takes a few tries to get to a space where you can learn to be emotionally detached so that you can listen better. So true understanding is a place where ears, eyes, body language are open to receive the transmission or message the other is trying to convey to us. Sometimes exposing yourself even to people who have opposite points of views, is really a great way to practice remaining open. And if you are a person who is firm on your beliefs, I'll gently challenge you by asking, what happens if you do change your perspective? Who are you without your firm belief? What kind of person do you think you'll become? These are some questions that you might want to ask yourself. Another behavior that I see quite often with people is more of an attitude, and it's an attitude of keeping the peace at all cost or not rocking the boat. this is called enabling, or at least one nuance of enablement. I think this is unhealthy for all relationships when you choose to ignore problematic behavior from a person or loved one, or when they fail to address a problem for example, in you. Who knows? Maybe right now you have a behavior or a habit that someone else is afraid to bring to your attention, or maybe they have addressed it and you're choosing not to look within to see if there's any accuracy to what they're saying. Nonetheless, the very energy of enabling people to behave in a way that may be hurtful, mean, or selfish not only incapacitates your personal growth, but it doesn't help them grow either. So you both lose. You don't allow the other person to be accountable, and it doesn't give them personal responsibility nor incentive to evolve or to change, and even to make the relationship stronger. And although we're not in the business of changing others, we do want to give people opportunities to evolve. And that also includes ourselves. So, why do people enable others? One reason is most people are afraid of confrontation. They are afraid to get into a draining shouting match, or simply they are intimidated. Let's take a very sort of common example. Let's say you experience your spouse or your boyfriend who are, very insecure people to the point that they need constant attention or be showered with compliments. Then you realize that you're so far deep in stroking their ego that you've both created a habit, right? They kind of expect that from other people. And sometimes insecure people also verbally have a way of self-deprecating ways. They say, oh, well, I'm not so good, sort of fetching for a compliment, if you will. That also comes into play. So there's a habit that's created, almost an addiction, because the compliments need to be fed constantly. So rather than continuing to give compliments to your spouse or boyfriend, confronting the situation could be to sit down with this person and find an alternative to help empower your loved one to experience their own self-value, regardless of compliments or not. The example of enabling the insecure person to continue their drama doesn't help them, and it puts you in an inauthentic way of being, because you'll have to feed that insecurity. We all have past healthy and unhealthy narratives. These narratives have a lot of history and ancestral baggage as well, right? Past traumas of marginalization, abandonment, or simply religious or spiritual beliefs that encourage turning the other cheek. Not confronting people, or enabling them really cripples people, cripples families and communities, and quite frankly, the entire human race if you start to really look at it and contemplate. I believe that in order to live truly who we are in our most authentic way, has to do with learning to confront people in a manner that is appropriate, and with a good dose of heartfelt discussion is how we can really live rewarding and fulfilling lives. When we help ourselves by looking within and stop blaming other people, when we stop living from our past trauma and negative stories, we can step into what we are meant to be. I will have to say that some people will not respond to you nicely, so don't take for granted that because you opened up and said something, with your heart, that they will respond, in the same way. Sometimes they, you know, don't accept it, and it might take a few tries depending on how triggered they are or how long the enabling has been going on. Um, or maybe there are people with whom you will not be able to come to a compromise. And at this point, you may want to reevaluate your friendship or relationship altogether. I personally have been an enabler. Many years ago, I didn't know about the concept of enabling until I read, I don't know, maybe about 20 years ago, a great book by Melody Beatty called Codependent No More. It's actually considered a classic. It's a great book, and she's really the first one that gave life to the concept of what it means, and actually the kind of people or a criteria of who enables. And because this was a foreign concept to me, I just kind of grew up believing that I needed to accept people the way they were, even when they mistreated me. Now, it is true that we do need to accept people, the way they are, but it doesn't have to be at our expense. I have many experiences, most of them actually very painful in regards to enabling other people, of lacking the confidence, if you will, to confront people who were either mean to me or disrespectful. And I will share one of those examples to sort of put this together so that you can understand it a little bit better. Many moons ago, when I lived in Italy, I had been a leader for the Young Women's Division in a Buddhist organization. And because our district was growing, my leaders decided that I share my responsibility with another young woman, also giving someone an opportunity to be in a leadership position. Things started off well, but soon began to decline because my co-leader began to display mean behaviors. For example, she would shout at me or feel the need to reprimand me over things that were not clear as to what she wanted to correct. Other times she chose not to visit certain members' homes and wouldn't explain why, and that was part of the leadership responsibility. When she didn't want to do something, she would just disappear, and it was difficult for people to get a hold of her. When you decide to take up a responsibility of leadership, such as the one she accepted, you have to step up and take responsibility and be sort of a role model. And part of that is, in this particular organization, visit other members' homes and be a source of encouragement. Anyway, this lady's behavior became worse, and I addressed this problem with our leaders, but they always encouraged me to, meditate or chant about it, and to sort of clear my karma, because it wasn't a coincidence, according to them, that I had encountered this woman in my life, right? And although I believe this to be true on a certain level, I think people do come into our lives for reasons and help us evolve, because again, if I didn't believe that, then the beginning of this conversation about how there's growth, opportunities for growth would be a moot point, right? I'd be a hypocrite. But what our leaders, sort of on the totem pole, failed to recognize and to also teach was that it was not ethical to allow members to hurt each other. But going back to me and my lesson within the intimate problem was that I was afraid of this woman. I couldn't confront her. I couldn't defend myself. And it was like, she reminded me of a trauma that I experienced with my own parent. So, you can hear the complexities of this experience. And when we kind of break it down a little bit, on a higher level, the Buddhist organization was enabling her and putting off their responsibility onto me. And then I was enabling the woman because I wasn't speaking up, because of my own fears of confrontation. And so the cycle repeats itself, right? Here we are all in this Buddhist organization, doing quote unquote good for, humanity and the planet, yet we all lost on a personal and collective way. We lost opportunities to step up in our leadership. We lost opportunities to be in our integrity and dignity as human beings. So the bottom line is there is always opportunity to expand our awareness, to understand ourselves, and to understand the world at large. We see and experience a lot of behaviors in our personal and collective life. We have a tendency, again, to look outside of ourselves. So we look at television, or we look especially at politics, which is a hot topic for a lot of people. We tend to criticize one party or the other, and because we think that our party is the better party, or that one politician is better than the other, or we make excuses for politicians, rather than looking at it, because there's a lot of emotion attached. But as much as I believe in love, and as much as I believe in growing and coming out of our fears to the best of our ability, as much as I believe that personal development is a lifelong endeavor, I also believe that emotion is really what gets us. It gets us hooked. And so if we truly want to have a better understanding, there has to be an openness there, a willingness there. It's not something that just comes from your mind. I mean, it might start there. You might begin with the decision to say to yourself, okay, I don't like this. I don't want to really hear it, maybe, because it goes against my beliefs or my dogma or whatever it is, right? But I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try. I mean, it begins somewhere, and it begins with you. So for those of you that especially are into the personal development, I would encourage you to stretch yourself, maybe after hearing this talk. There's always a deepening. There's always a level of deepening, but our ego can really get in the way. I hope this has been helpful to some of you. I know that I get private messages sometimes requesting more dialogue about the nuances of relationships and conflict and so forth. But so a couple of questions I'll leave you with is, look into your personal and professional life. Who are you enabling? Or maybe ask a family member or a good friend, or even your boss. Is there something or an area where I need to grow that I have failed to see, within myself, because I think that I've been right about something? Or is there someone feeding your insecurity or your feelings of inadequacy? Because they are just your feelings. It doesn't make it that you are an inadequate individual, right? I've seen a lot of very wealthy, successful people who are the most insecure, or I've seen beautiful women who are very insecure, right? So, take a look around your life and see where perhaps you're enabling others to behave in a way that eventually is harmful, even to your family, to your circle of friends, and to your work. I thank you again for listening, and I'm wishing you all a great journey, and talk to you later.